Mike, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
We had the opportunity to connect briefly, and just in our short conversation, I knew I had to have you on the show just because of how deep we got on life and people in such a short amount of time. So, want to kick it off. I know that you do a lot of coaching. Can you describe for the audience the type of coaching that you do with your clients?
Yeah, I appreciate that. When people ask me, I say executive leadership
Mhm.
and life coaching. To take it even further, the part I love around leadership is really a self leadership. That's not all that rare, unusual, but it's just the part that I enjoy most, right? How can we lead others effectively if we can't lead ourselves effectively? How can we grow at leading others effectively if we don't have a framework, an understanding, strategies, and mindsets in place to continue growing ourselves and leading ourselves more effectively? That's what I love. Not because I have the answers, but because it's a journey I'm on myself. And I'm a person that never doesn't like to travel alone.
Mhm.
So love being able to create space for others to do the same and to do it together.
Yeah. Yeah, and my wife and I are trained coaches. She's admittedly like 30x the coach I am, just to give credit where credit's due. But we always think of coaching as walking alongside somebody on their own journey in their life and being that third party,
Mhm.
like non-biased opinion that you can confide in, that you can help find the blind spots. You're working with people that, for lack of a better word or phrase, have it all together, at least to some extent, in that they have a high enough paying job to pay for a coach. They have achieved a certain level of success. Some of the folks listening to this show are aiming to get there. I'm curious if there's
Mhm.
any through line between what you see makes the folks you work with as successful as they are.
Oh, great question. Um, a big piece of it, you mentioned when you simply mention the word want, it's they know there's something more, right? I'll speak generally and then ask me
Sure.
questions so that I make sure I'm speaking to what your listeners really want to hear. But individuals who know there's a more, right? And I use
Mhm.
that more as broad as it sounds. They know there's a more. They know that reaching that more relies on them, right? We can make all kinds of excuses about externals, and they realize they can get there more quickly, more effectively, more efficiently when they reach out, they resource themselves. And so that's one, right? There's more that they want to get to. And then it's not just the want, but then there's got to be a level of commitment, a very
Yes.
solid level of commitment because it's not easy. The work required is not there. It's using reflection, right? Introspective muscles that we don't always use, um, and aren't really taught, if I can say it that way, or at least I never was. I shouldn't speak for everybody. So it's that knowing they want more, and again, more is very broad. It's not more in a shallow material sense so much as it is more to life, more of life, personally and professionally, and then a willingness to commit to it, to get uncomfortable, and to be vulnerable, and recognize that takes courage and strength.
Yeah. No, amen to that. I mean, it's not only the courage to get outside of the comfort zone, but to also just really look at yourself in the mirror and not beat yourself up too bad over the stuff that you
Yeah,
maybe don't
yeah.
like, that you render yourself unable to then go do the work to change it. And I think that a lot of people, especially in the social media world we live in, think of the physical markers of success, like the house, the car, the
Mhm.
2.5 kids and a dog, things like that. But you're working with people to help them find fulfillment, help them find
Mhm.
that more.
Yep.
What does that look like, and how can the listeners start to maybe do that work for themselves?
Mm. As you were talking, right, you're right. That's a lot of people talking about the material things, right? Most of the people that I come in contact with that are really hungry for more, they have all those things.
Mhm.
They were looking for, they wanted those things. Now they have them, and they're sitting there, a lot of them in this space of, I thought this would feel better.
Mhm.
I thought this would feel differently having the house, the 2.5 kids, the picket fence, the car. I thought this would feel different. And it doesn't. Not all of them, right? But that's where many of them come from. So the fun part is helping them lean into that instead of beating themselves, as you said, as you mentioned, instead of beating themselves up about that feeling, to help them see what a blessing and a gift that is, to recognize this and the fact that they're leaning in, and how do we embrace that feeling and turn it from guilt into an excitement about, hey, you're primed and ready for the next breakthrough, right? The next breakthrough in self-awareness, the next
Mhm.
breakthrough in what do I do with that self-awareness, the next breakthrough in what are the things that actually mean something, right? They mean something to me, and not just to me, but they'll have an impact of some sort. And that probably brings up another piece. Again, this is just my experience. I don't want to speak for everybody, but a lot of times that's what's missing too, is impact.
Mhm.
Recognizing that pursuit of things, not bad to have things, right? It usually comes at the sacrifice of having true impact, or even just being connected to the impact you are having. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. Could you expand upon it a bit, though,
Yeah.
for listeners?
Yeah. So as you would imagine, sometimes these conversations mean I'm no longer fulfilled by the work I'm doing.
Yeah.
And the first thought often is, I need to find a new career path. I need to find a new job. I need to find a new company.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's the case. Sometimes it's a matter of simply because we've gotten so wrapped up in the day to day, we've gotten so wrapped up in the mechanical, we've been distracted by so many other things going on. We've simply lost sight of the impact that what we're doing has, that aligns with the needs of other people and that aligns
Yeah.
with who we are. Right. And sometimes it's a matter of reconnecting with, what is it? What is the impact I want to have? How do I want to be? I once heard someone else say it this way, so I can't take credit for it, but it's always stuck with me. I once heard somebody say, purpose is the path to meaning,
Mhm.
and meaning is being the means to someone else's ends, not the end itself. So we get
Interesting.
s- so we get so focused on the end, what we want to
Mhm.
get, that we forget the purpose, meaning, fulfillment is actually found in being the means to someone else's end.
I have never heard that before, and I listen to an unbelievable amount of podcasts. I read a ton of books. I obviously am in a coaching setting more often than not.
Right.
I really wanna focus on this if we can.
Okay. You bet. You
Just
bet.
being the means to someone else's end. So is that being a servant leader, or what other ways
Mhm.
to put it would you describe it?
Yeah, definitely being a servant leader. And I think I remember who said it now. I think it was an Andy Stanley on his leadership podcast. I think is who I heard say it. And being the means to it. And yes, it's servant leadership. I also heard my coach, his name's Chris McAllister. He's the founder of SightShift, which is a framework I lean into with a lot of the work I do. He once said, he wasn't making fun of the word servant leadership, but he said, actually, if we get into what leadership truly is, it's about service.
Mhm.
It's I wish we did. He said, I wish we didn't have something like, I wish we didn't have to use the word servant in front of leadership because of where it's gotten to, because leadership is service.
Mhm.
Um, and what it can look like is, I remember taking, and on the, looking at my family, I remember taking my son to his baseball team, did a service project at a local food pantry. And our
Yeah.
job was to actually stand out, Christmas time, freezing cold. We were standing outside. He was kind of, standing outside, passing out food as cars came through.
Yeah.
He was a
Wow.
different kid afterwards,
Sure.
right? And he walked away from it, wasn't paid anything, right? He was focusing on an ends, right? He was thinking about having to do something that was just going to take up time, be in the cold, right?
Mhm.
Being there in the moment and being a means. to hand food to someone and to receive the gratitude and to watch how just in a matter of a couple hours, how many cars full of families that went through. He was a different kid afterwards, right? There was a level of meaning and purpose and fulfillment in that he didn't even expect, nor did I even talk to him about, right? Because being the coach, I just wanted to see how it impacted him, rather than trying to correct him on the way. And that was like a microcosm of what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
Working at a couple companies where I've worked admissions. I worked in admissions in higher ed starting out my career. And my favorite part of admissions wasn't I loved the university I attended. And the whole point of admissions is to get as many kids as you can to come to your campus. My favorite part though was sitting in the office with those freshmen, those first time freshmen, coming in, the parents didn't have any other kids that have ever been to school. This is a whole new process. They're overwhelmed. They come in and sit down in your office with their student. Their eyes are really big.
Sure.
I loved it when they left my office, not just having a wonderful experience at the University of Findlay, but they left my office feeling more confident about the process, about knowing what kind of questions they wanted to ask when they went other places, thinking about it much more from a level of excitement and possibility rather
Mhm.
than how do we navigate this? And hopefully connecting with them enough that they felt comfortable calling me up with questions regardless of their ultimate decision.
Yeah.
So that was another space where, yeah, the ends, if I focused on that, was just you want kids coming in from your region, right, to have healthy enrollment, but the fulfillment was in the means. How was I doing that? Was I going to do it focused on just the end, or was I going to do it focused on the impact it had for the people I spoke with?
Okay. So I would like to share a personal example because
Yeah, please.
I'm hoping it'll tie this all together for the listeners. So I was trying to be Stu the sports guy for a long time. Like I saw Jerry Maguire, that was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen being a sports agent. Realized pretty quickly being a sports agent was not going to be the thing for me, but
Hmm.
I was attending the University of Oregon. They got all that Nike money.
Yeah, right.
They have a robust sports marketing program. I was so focused on being Stu, the sports guy, and working for a team and being a hotshot sports executive that, to use your framework, I was so focused on the end that I completely ignored what the means would be and like who is I serving and what was the impact I was having. And I feel like in doing that, I never connected to any type of purpose other than trying to, to use a March Madness terminology, survive in advance, right? Like
Yeah.
survive today, survive the week, survive the month, just get to the next thing. And you even mentioned it earlier in this conversation, like the idea of, oh, if I change careers, or in my case in
Mhm.
baseball, if I just got to quote a better team, this is all going to be better, like a bigger
Yeah.
organization, higher payroll,
Yeah.
more benefits, blah, blah, blah. And guess what? It never did. Like I was still miserable. I was still super disconnected from
Yeah.
myself, who I was. On paper, I don't think I've ever been more successful in my life. There's nothing more attractive than Stewart Kraintz, New York Yankees. Nice to meet you.
That's right.
But I was the most unhealthy I've ever been just
Mm.
because my head was full of garbage. I wasn't taking care of myself, no connection to any type of higher power whatsoever. And I think the biggest indictment on that period of my life, Mike, is if you were to ask me, Stu, what do you want out of life?
Mm.
That would have been the most disarming question you could have possibly asked me because I didn't know. Like I was
Mhm.
chasing this end goal for no real reason other than I was chasing the achievements, chasing the accomplishments, because that's how I knew how
Mhm.
to find self worth. Never once looked at what's my purpose and who am I serving. And so, hoping that this ties it all together for the audience, because this is a beautiful framework that I've never heard before this conversation. Did I get it? And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And full transparency, and those that may listen to this that know me know this is true, right? I don't share it because I do it perfectly. And I even knew it back then when I was in higher ed. I can describe it the way I experienced it looking back. If I'd have known that's where I was really feeling the most purpose, I just knew what I liked. If I knew that's where I was feeling the most purpose, I wouldn't have, to your point, I would not have jumped from this college to that college and back to this college looking for,
Yeah.
oh, then it'll be better. I would have been more focused on, it's the means, right? How can I do more of this? Where does this means, right? Where can I do more of this here? Because I love the community. Um, so yeah, yes, you nailed it. And the part you share about it was the most unhealthy. That's what happens to us when we are leading ourselves for validation rather than impact,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yes.
Because I don't need to restate it because you said it beautifully in your story around what was most high, Stewart,
Yeah.
New York Yankees, right? And I'm not picking on it. That's what we all do. Every single one of us. This is a human thing. Um, when that's the end goal, and we're focused on just the end goal, we are seeking validation rather than impact.
This is a very important conversation we're having, because the people that do listen to this are high achievers. They are people
Hmm.
that want to achieve at a high level. How does
Hmm.
somebody take what we're saying today and not let it totally wreck their existence?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Um, I'll reiterate, this is a human problem. We
Mhm.
all do it. And even when I've been in this space specifically now since 2017, and daily I run into moments where it's not like daily I struggle with it, right? I'll just say it
Mhm.
that way. Daily I struggle with it. Here's the thing to remember: we are never going to get to a place where we never ever lead ourselves or anyone else for validation again. We're never going to get to a place where we let our insecurity drive the bus. We're human. It's going to happen. We're going to feel it. The cool thing about this is if we just continue, if we start practicing how to pay attention when insecurities setting in, and we're feeling the feelings, and we're focused on the ends, if we can start recognizing when it's happening and progressively break that cycle
Mhm.
by recognizing, number one, it's happening. Why is this happening? Embrace it rather than run from it or beat ourselves up about it, but embrace it, lean into it, and be like, why is this happening? What am I afraid of? What am I trying to prove is true about me, who I am? Or what am I trying to hide? What am I trying to shrink up, kind of not be noticed so that I'm not invalidated? If we can stop, recognize what's the narrative at the heart of that that's lying to us about our worth and our value simply for who we are, then we can turn those moments into growth moments. We can start separating our worth, our value, identity from outcomes and ends, and focus in on more of, hey, if I've got nothing to hide, nothing to prove, no reason to hide, what do I have to give to this moment best I can? There was a whole lot in those sentences right there.
Yeah.
And kind of squishing a whole framework into a few sentences. But hopefully what comes out of that is it's everybody. We all do this daily. It's about learning to recognize when it's happening and get underneath it, and progressively getting better and better at flipping our mindset back to, what's the means? What's the impact I want to have? How am I different? And then it actually becomes growth. We can turn it into growth rather than something we beat ourselves up about.
Dude, this is so, so good. I'm so glad we're having this conversation today.
I love it. I absolutely love these conversations because, again, like I said, I'm not someone who's arrived. I'm a fellow traveler on the journey. And the more I get to
Mhm.
have these conversations and support others in that journey, we grow together, right? The iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, someone that's been very influential in my own personal journey one of his quotes that he says all the time. We are always a masterpiece
Mm,
and a work in progress at the same
yes.
time. And I
Yes.
think that's one of the best ways to put what we're talking about today. I'm curious, Mike, what role does faith have in starting this process, getting connected to our purpose, and basically being that servant leader?
Um, for me personally, it's at the foundation. It's at the center, um, in so many different ways. And when I think back to when I think back to just my development journey, it started with my faith. It started
Mhm.
with, I grew up in the church. I grew up, my parents were both teachers in the school system. My mom did vacation Bible school at our church. My dad was our Sunday school teacher. Right. So I grew up small country church. It was always there. But it wasn't until I remember being, I don't know, elementary ages, and the Bible was sitting there. So I'd start reading a little bit, would like to say I was this great scholar. No, I was just checking a box, thought I was doing the right thing.
Mhm.
Got to college, that started turning into kind of that, there's something more here.
Sure.
And that's when things started. And my development, my true development journey started in college when I started leaning into being a part of different communities as well as doing study, um, and purposeful study, guided study to help me grow and get out past of just out beyond what I thought,
Mhm.
but what do others think? That then carried over into leadership development opportunities. But I think ultimately, as I think through your question and process myself around it, that's where the healthiest version of more comes from, is faith. And
Mhm.
just knowing that in growing, the more that means anything is, who was I created to be?
Mhm.
How do I continue to grow and expand that and and be a part of what I was created and called to be, and keep it all in perspective? To know it's less about, yeah, it's about me, but it's less about me. It's more about the who I am, the impact, and becoming who I was created and called to be. Um, and I don't even mean that necessarily in a very very. It could be very specific, but it could be. And I feel like I'm being who I was made to be when I simply go out to Easton with the family. And when I'm at Easton with the family, this is just the way I'm wired. I am looking for somebody. I'm people watching, and I'm looking for somebody that just needs a little joke or needs a hello, or
Yeah.
just looks like they need somebody to see them that day.
Mhm.
And I don't mean that's not a this, that's just the way I'm wired. And I think it's
Yeah.
because I love it when people do that for me.
Yeah.
It's a place in a way that I can live into some of how I was wired, and, hopefully bring a little bit of that to someone else.
Yeah.
I'll stop there and see if I'm on track with your question or if we need to
No,
redirect it all.
that this was great. I mean, I think what I'm hearing you get at is, faith plays a role. And I would
Mhm.
love to dive a bit deeper on, you know, faith being the most healthy version of more and
Mm,
pursuing more. We'll get to that in one second, but something
mhm.
else you said that I think I can't let slide for the listeners
Uh-oh.
in a good way though,
Okay.
is
Okay.
that the concept of being who you are meant to be. I know you're a very strong man of faith, but just to zoom it out a little bit more for the listeners who maybe aren't as locked in with their creator, whoever that is.
Mhm.
Um, I personally believe that all of us do have gifts, right? Like we have gifts that
Yes.
God has blessed us with. And I personally think that leaning into those gifts as hard as
Mhm.
we possibly can is a big clue as to figuring out what our purpose is, who we are, what we're about. It might not tell
Mhm.
us like this is the exact specific job I'm supposed to have and so on and so forth, but
Yeah.
it's a giant clue that at least for me in my framework of mindset, that this is who God created me to be. And like for me, it's people. Like I thrive in conversations, I thrive, leading people,
Hmm.
managing people, and it's because that's the gift I have. If you need me to calculate the mass of the sun, we're in trouble, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Me too. Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. Just to that point, right? I don't want to interrupt if you had more to that question there, but like you're s- you're speaking my language in that there's a framework within the site shift coaching, the framework we use. It's a Venn diagram. Love the Venn diagrams, right? Three circles that overlap: pain, play, and magic.
Mhm.
And it's like a filter for more. And I didn't think of this until you were just talking. It's like it doesn't give you answers, but it helps you use as a filter for kind of things and to think about what we call capital M mission and lowercase m mission. Lowercase m mission is simply your role and how you're living it out at any given time. Capital M mission is like that bigger sense of meaning, purpose, impact that you want to have. And coaching for me hits in the middle of this Venn diagram because
Mhm.
play for me, play are just the things you enjoy. Play and connecting with people. Just connecting with people is play for me. I just enjoy it. It comes easy. I was wired in such a way. I love it. So there's lots of things I can put in that category, but for this conversation, connecting with people is a play. Magic is something that you have natural gifts and a talents and abilities for, as well as it's something
Yes.
you continue to hone, right? So coaching for you and your wife, podcasting for you and your wife, you can name several other things, right, that goes into that magic. And for those of you listening, if you're not sure what your magic is, take a little time to think about, what do other people come to you and ask you about all the time? Is there something people are asking you for help with? Is there something people have told you, man, you're so good at this, I wish I could be this good at this, and you're kind of like, man, I just do it? That can be a good way to identify magic. Pain sometimes is often the toughest one to recognize. Pain in these circles is what's something, what's a pain you've experienced, and you've experienced it in your life in such a way that it compels you to do something about it in the lives of other people. Maybe it's something you survived and really proud of, and now as a result of surviving it, again, you feel compelled or you're drawn to other people in that space to support them, love them, encourage them through it, right? So pain, right? Some of my pain was growing up interpreting things in such a way that I thought success was fulfilling expectations of other people and that what
Ooh,
I want didn't matter.
me
Right. So
too, brother.
that's okay. Right. So we're resonating on a lot of levels. Right. So that part of my pain that speaks really loudly is my interpretation of encouragement and pushing, challenging I was getting was that what you want doesn't matter. It's your job to please other people and live up to expectations. As I've learned and grown through that, putting together the play, connecting with people, the magic, asking questions, having deep conversations, getting into deep conversations quickly, things like that, and then the pain of having those unrealistic expectations of myself and what success and what life should look like. I get to be in this space now. As kind of going back to what we talked about before, I get to be in this space where get to create safe space for people to really dive into that, to dig into it, to experience the emotion of it all, to process through it. And my prayer is they come out the other side knowing more about, not just knowing more about who they are, what they want, and how to go about starting making it happen, but now they have a framework to continue that journey. And right, it's not just giving a fish, but teaching to fish.
So good. So good. So to put a finer point on it, what
Yeah.
does success look like for you now, and what does more look like for
Mm,
you in this current season of your life?
Good questions, coach. It's realizing now it's been a while since I've kind of revisited that. Um, Man, success for me now looks like um, being in a space and a place where I get to continue creating space for other people and that I continue to do it in a way that has impact for them. And that impact is clarity, direction, courage, And ultimately, if it's someone that shares the faith, not everybody I work with shares the same faith, no problem, right? But I'm hoping they walk away with their faith bolstered, whether it's like mine or not.
Yeah.
Right. So it's its success is being able to create this space for people in whatever way I can, and they walk away and I walk away both better, more clarity, more direction, more courage, more faith. And then the more is, um, man, really good question, Coach. Um, the more is just closer and closer relationships with the people I care about most, being a better, continually becoming a better leader of self and a better leader of others. And not because I want to have all the answers and direct. I once had a conversation with a friend and colleague. His name's Scott Monroe. He and his wife owned 31 Gifts, and we had this conversation between. He asked me a great question. He's like, "What do you see as the difference between director and leader?" And that's all they said, those
Mm.
terms. And I was like, "Well, when I think of the word director, I think of somebody standing and pointing, right, and telling people what to do. When I think of a leader, I think of somebody kind of locking arms with people and say, 'Come on, let's go.'" Um, it's becoming a better leader of others by leading the way first, right? By action, um, talking only when necessary, maybe. So that's probably right now. It's a question I That's a question I have not asked myself, and I appreciate the question. We'll continue to think about it, but that's where my mind goes with the more right now.
And folks, like if you're listening to this, take the time to ask these questions of yourself. I'm a
Mhm.
huge proponent of journaling. I journal every
Yeah.
night before I go to bed, really just to empty my brain because it helps me
Mhm.
sleep, but also I learn things about myself, and I'm sure you can too by asking yourself questions like this. What does success look like for you now? And what does more look like for you in this season of your
Mhm.
life? And so,
Yeah.
so I want to kind of turn it over to you, Mike. Is there anything that you would encourage the listeners to ponder, journal on, meditate on, if that pray over,
Yeah.
if that's the right thing for them, about how to step into this place of servant leadership
Yep.
and purpose in
Yep.
their lives?
You bet. Um, Probably the best way I can encourage you to continue thinking about this and seeing examples of it is think about in your life people that have had the biggest impact on you, not only because of what they did, but because of who they are and how you felt around them, how they I don't want to say made you feel, because we need to start all taking responsibilities for our own emotions. They can certainly influence, right, and entice, but
Agreed. Agreed.
right. Um, and but it wasn't just what they did, it was who they are, right? And what
Mhm.
was it about? What was it about? How were they perfect? Here's the other thing: is were they perfect? And I guarantee you, you'll think and see ways that they weren't perfect. We may have painted them in our minds as perfect, but that what they were typically people who made mistakes, but then owned them and made them right. They had humility as they led. They used vulnerability
Mhm.
to close gaps, perceived gaps between where they are and where we are. They used it appropriately, and so think about those people in your life. And whether you're a person that shares the same faith as I do or not, I encourage you to look at the life teachings of Jesus,
Mhm.
because the actual framework comes from Scripture. It comes from Luke chapter 3 through 5. And it's this example of Jesus. There's, again, no matter what you believe about him and who he says he is and was and so forth, you can't deny the impact he's had on this world, even to this day. You cannot deny that. And what you see, it's in all the gospels, but in Luke 3 through 5, is you see this humility and this progression of, Jesus being considered to be the Messiah that they were waiting on, steps up to be baptized by John the Baptist, and John the Baptist recognizes him. He's like, "Hey, you're gonna get the mic paraphrase scripture here." He says, "Hey, you should be baptizing me, Jesus." And Jesus says, "No, this is the way it's to be done to fulfill all righteousness." He's baptized, And in the scripture, it shares that he is affirmed in his identity in that moment, that God is audibly heard saying, "This is my son whom I love, and in him I am well pleased." Jesus hadn't even started his ministry yet. He hadn't done anything to earn that. That
Yeah.
was the Father affirming the Son and who he is simply for who he is.
Mhm.
From that point, then it talks about in scripture, and again, I don't mean to, this is just my right. This is just, I'm not trying to force anything, but he's led into the wilderness to be tempted. And the enemy tempts him. How? The first question out of his mouth is, "If you are the Son of God, prove it." Jesus is so grounded in his identity, his worth, and his value in the Father, right? And in who he is. Might paraphrase Bible again as, "I don't have to prove it. There's nothing that I have to prove. Man does not live by bread alone, but by the very word that comes from the mouth of the Father, every word that comes from the mouth of the Father." And he's proceeded to be tempted in different ways to prove himself, to test God, to do things. Jesus doesn't. He
Mhm.
doesn't. Jesus is affirmed in his identity by the Father. He affirms he knows who he is by holding off temptation and not trying to prove who he is, not trying to hide who he is, but just being who he is. He goes back, miraculous things start to happen. Jesus now, we forget he's human, right? Jesus, but he's fully human, fully, again, I don't want to chase anybody away. He he realizes, because now he's really clear in who he is, his mission, his capital M mission, becomes clear. It's now an
Mhm.
overflow of who he is,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? It's now an overflow of who he is, not something he has to go off to define himself or to
Mhm.
make a name for himself. It's who he is. He's going to go do that. And as we see, he does it with a lot of lowercase m missions. He heals, he teaches, he's a friend, he's a
Yeah.
son, right? He's a brother, he's a cousin. He fulfills them through all those lowercase m missions, and he's doing it. And as a result of living out his mission from a secure space, knowing he has nothing to hide, no reason to hide, nothing to prove, his community then becomes this healthier space. Even though as you read scripture,
Yeah.
you find out the group he called together was a pretty hodgepodge group, right?
Yeah. Yeah. They sure were.
They sure were, right? But it was a healthy community because him at the very center didn't gather that community to validate himself.
Yes.
It was a community brought together from this secure identity in his space because it's the people he wanted to give to continue giving to the world, right? So it may have been more than what you asked for, but if I'm being fully transparent with like where all of this comes from for me and what I hope to be a part of for others is recognizing, again, even if you don't share in that same faith, recognizing just the wisdom, right? Just the wisdom and the ultra humanness of his life, his path, and that security in who he is and how that came out in leading himself and leading other people.
Yeah.
That's the more. I want
Yeah.
to be more like that, right? I want to be more like that, and I've got a long way to go.
Yeah. So I identify as a Christian man, and I know a lot of the folks that listen to this podcast identify as Christian as well, but even for the folks that don't, like, we're all God's children, right?
Hmm.
And so
Yep.
what I took everything you just shared, even if Jesus isn't, your Messiah, it's at least a beautiful example of walking in purpose, security of self, and then
Hmm.
moving with the all caps mission, which is something that's available to all of us. And I'm
Hmm.
actually love that you brought this to the table today, because I think that as much as there is a lot of, I'm just going to say, like, church hurt out there,
Hmm.
like people
For
having,
sure. Yes.
I will be the first to raise my hand. I've had a lot of really bad experiences with Christianity at an early age because of what individual churches were bringing and preaching.
Hmm.
When you actually come back to the teachings of Jesus Christ, like, there's infinite wisdom there, like, at the end of the day. And
Well,
so
Said. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
well said.
And the church hurt is another podcast,
Yeah, it is.
but
It is.
I also just want to thank you for just being a man of conviction and sharing your truth, because
Thank you.
it's your truth, and it
Thank you.
matters. And I think to the bigger picture of today's conversation, regardless of if we're talking faith or not, you do have to have conviction to be secure in yourself and who you are. Is that accurate
Correct.
to say?
That I would agree with that. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Because I think of myself again, Stewart Kraintz, New York Yankees. Nice to meet you. That was the biggest people pleasing version of myself. I would have
Mhm.
lied. I would have done whatever to get the sale. I would have,
Mhm.
again, no idea of who I was, but in learning to build confidence, learning to have convictions, and just planting my flag on who I am,
Mhm.
that's when my life began to take off. And yes, it involved learning how to walk with Jesus, which
Mhm.
again was my personal journey. Doesn't have to be for everybody listening to this. But like I would say for the folks listening, if you are unsure about faith, at least have faith in something, that there is some type of higher power out there that is conspiring in your favor if you allow it to do so. So Mike, this has been an amazing conversation. We've covered an unbelievable amount of ground. And
It's absolute joy. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate it.
where can folks connect with you offline, continue the
Mhm.
conversation,
Yeah.
possibly work with you?
The best place if you want to connect with me directly is Mike Clouse Coaching at gmail.com. I'm in the process of redoing website and such, but Mike Clouse Coaching at gmail.com. And that's Clous as in Sam, E as in Edward. And then really, I don't do a whole lot of social media. It's just a discipline I probably need to improve, being having my coaching practice. But I am on Instagram, and the name of my coaching practice is Lead Light, all one word, Leadlight, Lead Light Coaching and Consulting. So my IG handle is Lead Light Coaching.
And as always, folks, we'll have all of Mike's contact info made available in the show notes wherever you are catching this episode. So connect with him, continue the conversation. He and I met for a virtual coffee and immediately had just incredible
Yeah.
rapport. And, I just want to say that, nothing happens by accident. There are no mistakes.
Mhm.
I know that, not entirely sure what it's going to lead to, but you and I are meant to continue to develop our friendship relationship moving forward. And folks, like, tap in with Mike, like, brings a lot of wisdom to the table, and sure can point you in the right direction no matter what you're personally working on in your own life. Mike, I want to acknowledge you for being a man of faith, a man of conviction, but also just somebody that is very clearly embodying what it means to have a purpose, walk the talk in a lot of ways. And I think the thing that I admire about you the most is you don't carry yourself with the bravado of knowing better than anybody else. You're embodying the humility, and I think just the curiosity that I think a lot of folks need and resonate with to
Thank you.
actually do the work for themselves. And so I want to acknowledge
Thank you.
today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, I can give you 5 reasons just in the last 2 days that I can be reminded. I can easily remind myself I don't have the answers for everyone. I'm
Sure.
still working through all this myself. So, but thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And likewise, your heart, your curiosity. I may need to come to you for some coaching here. Great questions, and look forward to learning from you, my friend. It's a pleasure to meet you, connect with you further, and looking forward to learning more with you.
Absolutely. And final question we got for you. We ask all our
Okay.
guests, what are you acknowledging yourself for today?
Um, I'm acknowledging myself for stepping out of my comfort zone.
Mhm.
This is only the second or third podcast I've ever done, and they're not the most comfortable for me. So if you could see my feet wagging back and forth and shaking right now to get the nervous energy out, that'd be more obvious. But I will acknowledge myself for stepping out of my comfort zone in a unique way today.
Yeah. Well, I'll cheers to that because that's the only way we ultimately create the lives of our dreams is by being bold enough to get out there and do it. We can
Yeah.
theorize, we can talk about psychology, faith, all these things, but faith without works is nothing, right? So I
Amen.
appreciate you for showing up today.
Thank you.
Folks, this has been another episode of the show. Please tune in next week as we bring another amazing guest or message. Also, hit that like button, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any updates as they come through, and share this out with at least one other person. We know you got value from today's conversation. Cost of admission is always free, and it does more for the show than you know in terms of lifting others up and helping you all create the life of your dreams. We'll see you then.